Well, guys, it is that time again for another ranking video. And seeing as we are now in 2025, I will be looking at every movie Studio Series figure we had gotten in 2024. And most of these just so happen to be either Bumblebee movie, Rise of the Beasts, and our first two from Transformers 1. So, with that out the way, let's get into this list because some of these proved to be bangers, in my opinion. Taking the last spot on this list is going to Core Class Mohawk from The Last Knight and Concept Art Rumble and Frenzy, both of which are cores. And in the case of Rumble and Frenzy, apparently the Bumblebee movie had a bunch of unused character models or concept art that didn't make it into the finished film, and that is apparently something we may see throughout either later this year or in the coming years of Studio Series, considering there are a bunch of characters throughout the Michael Bay era who either appeared in video games or were cut from the movie but still got toys made regardless. And in the case of Mohawk, he's kind of our only Michael Bay era Decepticon, or Transformers in general, that we got throughout 2024, whereas the others were either from Bumblebee, Rise of the Beasts, Transformers 1, along with the Studio Series 86 and Gamer Edition War for Cybertron lines. Now, Mohawk is a really good core, and I say really good to an extent, because the only saving grace is the opening mouth, which is similar to Beast Wars Inferno that we got in Legacy back in 2022. Transformation is kind of decent. I like the whatever paint we did get on him. And in the case of Rumble and Frenzy, I still laugh at the fact that we got Bumblebee movie Frenzy before we got Bayverse Frenzy, though to be fair, Bayverse Frenzy would have to be at this scale anyways, and he wouldn't be able to transform. But, you know, these are decent cores, especially if you have Bumblebee movie Soundwave and Ravage, who I was going to put here in the video because I have these two, and to show off their compatibility with that Soundwave. Coming in at the 8th spot goes to the controversial take on Wheeljack as we saw in Rise of the Beasts. Now, as a big Wheeljack fan, I did not like the design, or at least I didn't like the very obvious nerd face or the suspenders with the straps. Now, that's just from a design standpoint. From a toy standpoint, it's mid. I found this figure to be kind of mid, because the transformation, even though it's complex, and I do sometimes like complex transformations, I did not like how, rather than borrow the engineering from the mainline deluxe of Wheeljack, or Pablo as fans have referred to him because of his accent in the movie and his, very obvious colors, and alternate mode, which is the only good thing about the figure, is the alt mode, which is an officially licensed Volkswagen van. Yeah, I do not have a lot to say about this figure that would be positive. I mean, the articulation is good, the sculpt is good. Like, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about this figure, and that's really due to the design itself. Which is also how I feel about Dark of the Moon Wheeljack, or as he was called, Q, which was his name on screen. But again, Pablo Wheeljack is kind of mid. So, if anything, I only got him just to complete the Rise of the Beast cast, and, because I like Wheeljack, but this wasn't really doing it. Taking the number 7 spot goes to Rise of the Beasts Deluxe Class Scorponok. Now, in comparison to Wheeljack, this is a much better figure in that, with a design that we never saw in the movie, in the sense that, he was in the movie, but he just never transformed into robot mode. This is a good recreation of what we saw in the concept art for his robot mode, as he had a bunch of different, robot mode designs. And yes, the tail weapon is, what you expect. You just rip it off, or, you just leave it on the back. Now, in terms of articulation, he's actually quite good with the ball joint in the arms and the shoulders, waist joint, everything, ball joint in the feet for ankle tilt. So the fact that he ended up being a better figure than Wheeljack, it says a lot, because, and as a big Scorponok fan, especially Beast Wars Scorponok, this was a good translation from Beast Wars into live action. Now, obviously, the Scorpion head is the same as the robot head, so there's not really much going there. Now, I will admit, the toy could have taken inspiration from one of the other concept art designs for his robot mode, but as he stands, he's quite the little creature. Teleporting onto the number 6 spot goes to Bumblebee movie Skywarp. Now, he's only lower on the list because he's an obvious redeco of the previous Starscream, Thundercracker figures we got previously. Now, obviously, unlike Thrust with the retooled Conehead, he's just a palette swap with Thundercracker's face. And I say Thundercracker's because, his was obviously based on Blitzwing's head design rather than Starscream's, who had a completely different face. But as Skywarp stands, colors may be a little bland aside from the purple, which makes him pop, though admittedly I think the areas that are this kind of gray should have been black, because G1 Skywarp is black. I mean, shoot, the head is already painted black, and along with the hands and the wing blasters. So, again, there's not really much to write home about Skywarp, because, the Seeker mold, no matter how many times they repaint it, is still good. The transformation is good. Articulation is great. While he could benefit from black paint, which, unfortunately, this is accurate to how he appeared in the movie, there's not much else to really say that hasn't been said about the previous Bumblebee movie Seekers, not counting Studio Series Blitzwing. But as Skywarp stands, he's what you expect. Making his way onto the top 5, and in 5th spot goes to concept art Sunstreaker for the Bumblebee movie. Now, as I mentioned with Rumble and Frenzy, he was one of the characters that was planned for the Bumblebee movie, supposedly, and finally has a figure based on unused concept art for the aforementioned Bumblebee movie. And as a figure, especially for a Cybertronian Sunstreaker, he's actually quite good. Like, articulation is what you'd expect from a deluxe. The orange, admittedly, isn't, the best. And the actual concept art model, if I, can find an image, if I can pull up an image, isn't, the best. It kind of makes him look fat, whereas the toy, looks a lot skinnier. Now, there's not much to say about this figure, aside from the fact that it's really well done. Articulation is good. The transformation into his Cybertronian alt mode is just as good, and resembles something of an Cybertronian mode of Revenge of the Fallen Sideswipe's alt mode with the headlights. And as evident by the pose, I don't think this figure gets talked enough of, and I think he's kind of slept on. If he's still on store shelves, I recommend getting him as soon as possible and when you can. Is he a must-have? Not really. But if you need a Sunstreaker, then this is one to go for. Rising up from the mines to claim spot number 4 goes to the Studio Series number 114 Transformers 1 Deluxe Class Megatron. Now, why did they make him and Studio Series Optimus Prime from Transformers 1 Deluxes? Because Hasbro wanted us to be able to afford them, when honestly they should have been Voyagers. And if they were Voyagers, this figure would have gotten a lot more praise, and, he comes off as quite bland with the color scheme, regardless of it being accurate to the movie, though in the movie he's a lot more shinier. And yes, I had to put him in the pose as seen in the final battle of Transformers 1, which may be a spoiler for those who did not see the movie. And if you did not see the movie, or you did not see my in and out of theater reaction, then you guys missed out on something peak. Because the movie was peak, and I believe the Transformers 1 figures are going to be equally as peak. But with that aside, I do think he suffers from some inaccuracies, like the inaccurate fusion cannon, which he didn't use as Megatron. He used it when he was D16. When D16 became Megatron, he had a much different fusion cannon that had 3 barrels. So they did miss the mark on that, though admittedly with the actual arm gun that's for his left arm, you can sort of recreate that with this piece and use one of the 2 guns on his back as the actual gun he had on his left arm when he became Megatron. Now, there may or may not be a third-party upgrade kit to give him a much accurate triple-barreled cannon, along with, better fists, because the fists are unfortunately from the tank treads. But that's just a minor nitpick in what is overall a good figure. Transformation is actually quite nice, even for me. So there's quite a bit to say about this figure that, if I don't do a review for it, I'll state my opinions here. Lighting our darkest hour at number 3 goes to Studio Series Transformers 1 Deluxe Class Optimus Prime. And as I said with Megatron in the previous entry, why they made them deluxes when they should have been Voyagers is really just due to them wanting us to be able to afford them. Now, even at a deluxe scale, he comes with a Matrix of Leadership, which he can hold with 2 slots in his fists, along with coming with an Energon axe, and this piece for the truck mode, which has a tendency to slip off, and I'm not a big fan of that, along with his crotch piece that, tends to pop off. So why I didn't put Megatron in this spot and Optimus, that's because, I had Optimus a bit longer than Megatron, and I had more experience with the figure. Of course, he's a figure that you will be able to find easily at mass retail along with Studio Series 86 Bumblebee, due to them being part of the Level A assortment of Studio Series that Hasbro is now doing for these 2 specific characters, because they are big names for Hasbro. Now, articulation is actually kind of good. I like the transformation, which is same thing I said with Megatron. The third color scheme he has for his limbs and thighs may come off as a little odd, along with the smokestacks. I mean, it's mostly accurate to the movie, though in the movie it was a different color tint. But, as this stands, I will admit this is one of the better Optimus Primes we got this year, and, well, not this year, I meant 2024, not 2025, because 2024 was the year of Optimus Prime, as he is the premier legacy character of Transformers. However, there were 2 other figures that this figure just could not beat for me. Taking the runner-up spot at number 2 goes to Bumblebee Movie Voyager Class Shockwave, a much-needed improvement over the Core Class figure we had gotten in 2022. Now, he does fall short of bicep rotation, which ultimately drags the figure down. Now, there is an upgrade kit coming to fix the biceps to be able to make him more articulated, but as he stands, he's actually quite well articulated, especially with the arms having this joint and the hand having a separate joint. Why they engineered that into the figure, I don't know. But he is probably one of the best figures I've handled in 2024. And in reference to his original Dark of the Moon toy, apparently, you can swap the cannon on both arms, along with the obvious hose. Now, again, he does fall short of articulation, not having a lot of ankle pivots. He just has, like, a little bit. Waist joint is good, however. Like, despite the problems with the articulation, he is one of the best figures to come out of 2024 and is accurate to the character's depiction that we briefly saw in the Bumblebee movie. Now, if only we could get another movie, live action wise, that focuses on this character, because Shockwave has been out of the limelight in terms of movies as a main antagonist for far too long, because he's never really been a main antagonist in anything, unless you're counting IDW's comics and some of the cartoons, but besides the point. I like the transformation into his very Transformers Prime and Transformers Animated inspired tank mode, because obviously, despite, being a laser gun in the G1 cartoon, comics, and toy, along with him having a recent figure in the War for Cybertron Trilogy Siege toy line, this Shockwave hasn't. As a fan of Shockwave, as a big Shockwave fan, I haven't been able to come up with a gun mode that uses the legs, uses the actual cannon arm. But with that aside, if you're a completionist and you have everyone from the Bumblebee movie, or you want a Shockwave figure, then this is the one to go for. Destroying and dominating his way into the number one spot, to no one's surprise, is anyone really surprised? It is the concept art Bumblebee movie, Megatron. This figure was one of my highly anticipated figures of 2024, to the point where I did not find him until I went to a Target in the Bronx, in New York, with Studio Series 86 Springer. And then he showed up in a Target that was a town away from me in December. And I found a good amount of copies of him at TFCon in November. But with that aside, this figure has been highly sought after by a lot of people, to where he was the only new leader class figure, aside from the 86 figures we got in Studio Series. Now, his transformation is... well, he's a triple changer. They made this Megatron transform into a jet and tank in reference to his Bayverse incarnations, and unintentionally, the Marauder Megatron that was cancelled for Transformers Animated as concept art, well, not concept art, but, artwork of of the Marauder Megatron inspired alt modes were designed, but then we got the messes we ended up with, which is the tank and jet mode of this figure. Now, does that drag the figure down? No. What brings the figure up is a fan-made gun mode, which I personally prefer, because it makes him a multi-changer. Because even though it's not in the instructions, I like the idea of Megatron being a multi-changer, because it's Megatron. He's transformed into a bunch of different things after the G1 series ended, from tanks to jets, helicopter and animated, and recently in Earthspark. He's transformed into a lot of things, and I can praise this figure a lot for the fan modes. Now, for the articulation department, along with his fusion cannon, hence why I put him in this pose, the articulation is quite... This is a really peak Megatron figure, to where I love the hand articulation, especially the pointing finger, because you don't see this on a leader class figure like this. And he is one of two leaders to achieve this, the other leader being Studio Series Rise of the Beasts Optimus Primal. Now, whereas Primal has, the two fingers together, Megatron specifically has a pointing index finger. And again, I really love this figure, to where I would have a lot more to say about it that hasn't already been said by other people. I love the transformation, despite, the crap alt modes, the fan modes you can achieve with him, and the articulation, because if I ever have a definitive Megatron in my collection, it would be Bumblebee Movie Megatron. Because what else is there to say about this absolute god of a figure? And there you have it, guys. That is a wrap on my ranking of every movie specific Studio Series figure from 2024. Now, 2025 is looking to be more promising, as you know, we are getting some of the Michael Bay designs back, because there are still characters that need to get made, such as Dark of the Moon Hatchet, Age of Extinction Optimus Prime, Dark of the Moon Q/Wheeljack, and finishing out the Rise of the Beasts cast with Ape Link, who, as we all know, is going to be a retool of Optimus Primal. But with that said, I want to thank everyone for joining. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, Discord, join my server, all that fun stuff. And with that said, I will see you all next time.